Moving into committee business now, I'd like to move my motion. So, that given that Canadian families and small businesses have to budget before they spend, and given the economic uncertainty facing Canada, that it be reported to the House the committee calls on the Minister of Finance to table a budget before Parliament closes for the summer. And we do have this on notice to the clerk with both official languages. This Prime Minister said he was a man with a plan before the election and during the election. We heard that multiple times, but it turned out that was not true.
Yes, Mr. Turnbull?
My understanding is that committee business is conducted in camera.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turnbull. There's another point of order, and then I'll confer with the...
Ma compréhension, c'est qu'on n'a pas reçu encore du greffier la version dans les deux
We
langues.
have not received from the clerk the version in both languages, and as a francophone, I cannot actually appreciate this motion.
Madame la Présidente, le courrier vient d'arriver.
The email just came in, Madam Chair.
Oui, le greffier a...
Indeed, the clerk just sent the email.
The committee can take place in this way unless it's of a secure nature. So, thank you. Turning to Mr. Holland.
I'll continue. So, once again, this Prime Minister before and during the election multiple times said he was a man with a plan. He said he had some type of plan to get this country back on track, but after helping over the last 5 years as Justin Trudeau's main economic advisor to cause the worst inflationary crisis in Canadian history, with the most rapid interest rate hikes in Canadian history, that all along the way supported a consumer and an industrial carbon tax that went up every single year, that made the cost of food go up every single year, that forced more and more families to go into the food banks, in fact, doubling food bank usage in this country, making the rate of inflation on food go up faster than any other country in the G7, making more and more Canadians go into insolvencies because they doubled the cost of housing. This is the same Prime Minister over the last 5 years that caused all this pain and misery. And then he turned around and said he had a plan. But a budget is a plan. And first he said there would be no budget. And then through conservative pressure, they said there would be a mini budget. And now supposedly we're supposed to have a full-on fall budget, but the families that are 1 in 4 that are skipping meals, that are standing in food bank lines, they can't wait for that. Canadians are desperate to know what the state of Canada's finances are after this government has already promised, this Prime Minister has promised that he's already going to spend more than Justin Trudeau. In fact, the total debt on Canadians today is around $1.27 trillion. And this Prime Minister has promised he's going to spend more than Justin Trudeau right away with about $600 billion in new spending. Canadians need to know what's going to happen to their taxes. They need to know what's going to happen to Canada's credit rating with all this expenditure. We all know that under this Prime Minister's advisory, they drove out around $600 billion of good Canadian investment to other places, mostly to the US. Under this government's watch, this Liberal government, now more than ever, unemployment is up. It's at 7%. Youth unemployment is up. There's no jobs for the youth that are graduating, so a lot of them are moving out. Newcomers are living in their cars. They're living under bridges that we've heard of. It doesn't sound like a first world country anymore after 10 years of the Liberal government. And now they've refused to present a budget to Canadians that would be clear and transparent on what way and what direction they're going to take their government. They put up anti-energy laws like Bill C-69 that doesn't let any new pipelines get built. What Canada desperately needs is to become an independent energy superpower. And with that bill in the way, no mines are going to get built, no pipelines are going to get built, no big infrastructure can get built. And we've seen that. That's why investment has been fleeing out of Canada. Bill C-48, yes, we can take our product to the West Coast, but it can't go anywhere. And those are markets that are desperately need Canadian energy. The world needs Canadian energy, but this Liberal government wants to make sure that our product stays in the ground, and other dictatorships are the ones that are benefiting from that, and the environment doesn't benefit in any way, because clean, low-carbon energy can come from Canadian energy, because we have the
order,
best
Chair.
economic standards.
I believe that the bells are ringing for a vote, and we don't have unanimous consent to continue, because I think many of us want to go up to the House to vote.
Saved by the bell.
Do we have unanimous consent to continue? We do not. Okay, so this. Do the members want to come back after the vote? Yes, they do. We have unanimous consent to come back? No? Okay. All right. Well, then we want to come back. Great. So we are suspended for the time being then. Thank you. And we'll see you after the bells, or after the vote. Mr. Hallen, I believe the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chair. So as I was saying, the Bill C-48, the tanker ban, which lets our resources get to the West Coast, but we can't sell it to any markets off of that coast because of the ban itself. The industrial carbon tax, which needs to be removed to make Canada more competitive on the world stage. Not to mention our low carbon energy is at the highest environmental and human rights standards probably around the world. And it's something that we should be proud of. But again, this Liberal government is set on keeping that our good product in the ground, enabling more dollars for dictators and less powerful paychecks for our people here in Canada. And not to mention the job-killing oil and gas cap, which according to Deloitte could cost 110,000 good-paying Canadian jobs. So this attack on our energy sector over the last 10 years by this government shows how unserious they are. So it is Canadians that are asking for a budget this spring. They cannot wait until the fall. And what Canadians are asking for in that budget is for a plan to unlock our energy industry, to unleash our resources, get rid of some of those anti-energy bills that this government brought in. What they're asking for is to control the cost of living, this out-of-control inflationary crisis that this government created, where food prices are the highest in the entire G7. They're asking this government to bring some common sense policies, or adopt ours, in fact, that would actually get homes built in this country. And of course, that also includes control the government spending so that interest rates don't go up, caused by inflation. As I said before, this new Prime Minister wants to spend more than the old guy, Justin Trudeau, and he was upfront with that on day one, which could make inflation and interest rates go up. Canadians also want in this budget, they want crime under control. Under this government, with their soft on crime policies that brought in Bill C5 and C75 that gives repeat offenders easy access to bail. And what we see in this country is Canadians are scared. They're scared to be at home in their cars. They're scared to send their kids to school alone. This country is not safe anymore because of the soft on crime policies by this government. Those two bills need to be repealed. Canadians are saying that now under this government, criminals have more rights than victims do, because it's the repeat offenders that are easily getting bail. We need to keep repeat offenders in jail and not give them bail. And we see across this country extortions up more than 300%, because Canada has become a safe haven for criminals and those that are committing extortion. And lastly, Canadians want to see a plan for immigration. The Bank of Canada said that it was the population growth under this government, this out-of-control population growth, that was contributing more further to the housing crisis. And so, the Liberals they expanded the population growth in order to get more votes. But Canadians are suffering without proper services. There's not enough jobs, and there's not enough homes, because new home starts have gone down under this government. Not to mention housing costs have doubled. So even newcomers are not able to survive. I came here as a newcomer, so did my family. And back then, you could live off of one paycheck. It's just not the same anymore. Canada is not the same country anymore. That's what we keep hearing all over the place. So we need to restore what Canada used to be. It used to be a place where your hard work could earn you a powerful paycheck that could afford affordable housing and affordable groceries. And you could have those things living in a safe neighborhood. That was the Canadian dream. And that is a Canadian dream that needs to be restored. That's why now more than ever, Canadians need a budget from the Liberal government now in the spring before the summer starts, so that there's some assurity that this Prime Minister who said he had a plan actually shows that he has a plan. So once again, we are calling on this Liberal government to release a budget this spring. To give Canadians some assurity that they can live in that Canada that we once used to know and still love. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you, Mr. Hallen. I have Ms. Kobina next.
Thank you. So it is my understanding that this Prime Minister values private sector practices, and in that light, I would like to share, as a professional, as a finance professional of 14 years, if I was to pick up a file where I see that the revenues are going down, the expenses are going up, there is no forecast, no budget, no plan, and not only that, the funds are being requested in a very short timeline, that would be an immediate decline. And further to that, it would be a referral to the financial restructuring team, particularly giving a history of consistent deficits, poor management, particularly given the tight timeline. If anybody was reviewing a file like this, it would, I think everybody would think it's some sketchy business. And so with that, I am very concerned that there is no desire to put a budget forward this spring. I think it's highly irresponsible. Particularly because we have an affordability crisis, and I don't think it's a very complex concept to think that you cannot spend your way to affordability. That is very irresponsible. So when we cannot be borrowing to fund affordability measures. Without the benefit of a budget, that's exactly what it looks like, because we are not seeing any reduction in spending. We are only seeing a reduction in revenue, and despite the fact that there's a lot of moving parts in the economy right now, where there's instability, but that's exactly why we need a budget. We need to adopt this basic private sector practice of preparing a budget before we spend. I have not seen any responsible manager go off and prepare a list of expenditures before even considering what you have in terms of revenues. So any measures of affordability, as I see it at this moment in time, would be funded by borrowing. And that is like going grocery shopping with your credit card, but you're going to pay more later because there is an interest. And right now, with the $486 billion of spending that is being requested, that spending will go on the national credit card, and the interest is mounting. That is poor management, highly irresponsible. We need to respect taxpayers' dollars, and because of that, we need to see a budget. We need to see the flow of funds, the revenues, expenses, and what the real plan is. We cannot be playing with words and saying, "Oh yes, we have a plan," but we're going to keep you blindfolded until we actually spend the money. And that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Kubina. I now have Mr. Turnbull.
Thank you, Chair. And it's great to be back in committee with so many colleagues. And I know this is our first meeting, so it's important that we have gotten set up. And congratulations to you, Chair. And congratulations to the vice chairs. Look, I think it's a bit unfortunate that we're starting out this way, given the fact that we have C4 legislation to consider, which I think should be the priority, as is the formal practice of most committees on the Hill when the government has. And I want to acknowledge that we seem to have done a good job of standing all together in voting for C4. I believe it got unanimous consent, or it got the support of all members of the House of Commons that voted. And it's great that it's now in committee. I think so. It's a bit unfortunate that we're, sort of spending a lot of time debating a motion, but that is the prerogative of members on the committee to bring forward motions. So I totally understand that they're able to do so. I certainly would prefer that we had an in-camera session to consider committee business, where we could put all of the potential motions that each party has to study on the table, and come up with a schedule for the fall that would have us using our time very efficiently and effectively to get our business done. I know all of us appreciate, being elected members of Parliament. We want to use our time. Time is the greatest resource that we have. It's certainly is important that we use it effectively, that we value each other's time, and that we work to get things done. And I know that C4 offers considerable tax relief for Canadians at a time that I know that they need it. And I think we can all agree on that. That's how members have voted in the House, so I know that we have their support. Now, I know this motion speaks to the desire that the Conservative Party has for an immediate budget, which I find interesting, to say the least, given the fact that their leader, Pierre Poilievre, who no longer has a seat in the House, but who would not commit in his 100-day plan to submit a budget. So it's interesting that there's always seems to be, or often seems to be, in my 6 years on the Hill, or just under 6 years on the Hill, to be a double standard with the Conservative Party and its members, because if the election had have turned out differently, I'm sure that they would not be tabling a budget within the timeline that they would set out for the government. So, or at least there was no commitment to do so, which would indicate that there was no desire to do so, or no willingness to do so. Now, I mean, I would say we just came out of a federal election.
I don't know. This point of order is directly related to the member's comments, Mr. Turnbull's comments, and the fact that he's actually putting things on the table that are, in my opinion, directly not true. Budgets are budgets, and every party committed to putting a budget on the table in the House of Commons, and Mr. Turnbull cannot say that my party did not.
Mr. McLean, I believe that's debate. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. That's not a point of order. I know that the standing orders are quite specific about points of order, but the veracity of a claim, the member is certainly, Mr. McLean, is certainly able to contest the veracity of a claim that I make on the record at any point when he has the floor. But until then, I would appreciate just being able to finish providing my perspectives and thoughts, as is my right, which is protected under the standing orders as the rights and privileges of members of Parliament to speak their mind in all parliamentary proceedings. So, listen, I was starting to say that we just came out of a federal election. The House has only been back for 3 weeks. We've tabled I would say, some very big pieces of legislation, making some huge leaps forward on behalf of Canadians. All of the things that the government is currently implementing were part of our platform and were disclosed to the public in advance. We received a mandate from the Canadian people. We formed government. I understand that other members form the opposition parties, respectively. They're obviously going to hold us to task, and I appreciate that at all times. But I also think that there needs to be a reciprocity here in terms of understanding that, well, we formed government with a mandate from the people and a clear plan and platform, which is a fully costed platform, which was voted for by the Canadian people. So, and we have confirmed numerous times that there will be a budget in the fall of 2025. Now, I would just remind members that Brian Mulroney, who unfortunately passed away, who was a very honourable member of Parliament and quite a good Prime Minister, I certainly looked up to him. I met him once and had, I think from my perspective, he was a very good progressive conservative leader. And he did not table a budget for 300 days. So just think about that. He earned all of our respect. He was a great prime minister. All of us can acknowledge the work that Brian Mulroney did. I should say the Right Honourable Brian Mulroney. But he, he did not table a budget for over 300 days. That's not to say that budgets shouldn't be tabled, but it is in informal practice. There's no actually statutory requirement, as far as I understand, to table a budget within a number of days. There's an importance to budgets, but they're not the only way that governments express their plans. So the Conservatives keep saying we don't have a plan. Well, we do have a plan. We have a platform that was disclosed to the public that Canadians could scrutinize. And in fact, when they looked at that plan, they voted for us. They put us in our seats.
You serious?
And by us, I mean the Liberal Party members that formed government. Granted, minority parliament, a few seats short of a majority, but a strong mandate for a minority government nonetheless. And certainly, we are implementing that plan. So I would suggest that a fall budget is what we've committed to. It's what we will deliver. And I think there's a real importance to forming that budget with having budget consultations. And Chair, I had hoped today that maybe we would have some informal discussion with a real collaborative tone and talk about how the committee might work together to do pre-budget consultations leading into the fall, where we could obviously have the runway that's needed to formulate a budget that really reflects where the country is at and where we see the country going. And so I don't want to diminish the importance or the role that a budget plays. It certainly plays an important role, but it is not the only tool for expressing the government's plan by any means. And, so listen, I think what I would suggest, I have some other thoughts, but what I would suggest is an amendment to MP Halland's motion, and it reads as follows. So that the committee calls on the Minister of Finance to table a budget. I think that simplifies it. I think it gives the essence of what every member here could agree to. I think it would get us to a point of consensus, which is always what we try to achieve at committees, is getting as close to consensus as possible. And I know that my colleagues will have thoughts on why a budget is important, and certainly with the commitment to doing that in the fall, I'm sure that all committee members would happily agree to this amendment. So thank you very much, Chair. I'll cede the floor.
Okay, thank you, MP Turnbull, for that, and thank you for proposing that amendment. Is there anyone who would wish to speak to the amendment?
Thank you. And with the amendment, in fact, I'm not certain if it's in order. It changes the meaning significantly. I would argue that the very point of the motion the main motion is to table a budget before Parliament closes. That's an essential element of the main motion. But be that as it may, I've got the floor. I've got some remarks on that are going to, I guess, would address either the amendment and the main motion. But if you've ruled in order, then we'll just continue. But the look, this government campaigned on the urgency of our time, the multiple crises facing Canadians, many of which were 10 years in the making from the current government's tenure. And then refused to table a budget. So that's why we had called on them to table a budget before we rise, and so I will oppose the amendment and vote for the main motion. But in absence of a budget, all we have are the main estimates that this government has tabled: $486 billion in budgetary spending with no budget. So almost $500 billion in budgetary spending with no budget. If the budget is not tabled until, say, November, we'll be about 20 months without a budget at a time of crisis wherein the other party campaigned on an immediate budget. Past governments, including the former Conservative government, tabled budgets very quickly after elections. This is something that is ordinarily done. And so in absence of a budget, we can merely just look at these estimates, $486 billion, and compare them to, say, last year's main estimates. And in that comparison, it is revealed the extent to which the government is not governing in accordance with the platform and the promises made during the election, because they are allowing additional bloat to the size of government. The size of the government has expanded 40% in the tenure of this government, and the main estimates can indicate that is even getting worse. Also, the use of private contractors, which has increased. So I would argue that I would hope actually that we would be able to defeat the amendment, pass the main motion. I would call upon Liberal members of this committee to vote in favor of the main motion. They campaigned on a platform of a plan to deal with the crises of this moment. And so I would hope that Liberal members would want to put pressure on the government to do the right thing and to table their budget so Canadians know how they're going to finance, how they're going to pay for, what taxes are going to have to increase in order to fund the spending that is clearly is increasing as a result of these main estimates. So thank you, Chair.